Welcome, everybody. This is SharePoint Dev Weekly, and it is 1/2, whatever that means actually on a on a date. So it is the 2nd of January, so we're using the US way of the date formats. We really need to figure it out how to make it international. So this is episode 20 of the SharePoint Dev Weekly, and right after New Year, and we're trying to do this every single week. So we're trying to make sure that everything is we get it recorded. And this one is planned to actually go live today. So when you see this on the 2nd of January, we recorded this in the morning. Woohoo! Hey! Awesome, right? Or something. I don't know. So we don't have any visitors this one. We didn't want to book anybody because this is not a typical time when we record this, typically on Mondays, but then on the following Monday, we'll have some visitors dropping in. How was your Christmas and holiday break, Waldek? You're still actually on break, right?
Yeah. So I had last week of December and the first week of January off. It was just a great time to be at home, spend time with kids, wife, enjoy time off, and also tinker with them some things.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense.
And you?
Well, yeah, I didn't actually have any time off, so I've been catching up on things. There's so many stuff on a to-do list and trying to figure out how to make those happen. It's actually a great time to do something which is on the long-lasting to-do list when nobody else is
right.
So as an example, if we actually go to the dev topics as well, so we are releasing today or tomorrow the new versions of SharePoint 2016 and 2013 NuGet packages for the season. So finally, been a while to actually do a refresh on those, because there's if whoever is watching this is using C# and NuGet packages or VP.NET, there's always dependency on the client-side NuGet package versus the SharePoint server-side NuGet package, and we need to make sure that they are in line. So we can't use a newer version of the CSAM unless the server is on the same version, and that is always causing a interesting, let's say, a conflicts.
Well, yes, it makes sense, right? I mean, it makes sense, right? Because the client-side APIs that we use are communicated in the end with server, and if there's something in client-side API that doesn't have server-side counterpart, well, then you're calling something that isn't there. So.
Yep. Exactly. That's precisely what happens, and there's a lot of people who especially in the past, were thinking that, hey, I'll just use the SharePoint Online CSAM with SharePoint 2016, and then I'll get access more. And the answer is no, you don't. You'll get a not enabled property or method or whatever. So
exactly.
So, but anyway, we've been, for example, for SharePoint 2013, we've been using a baseline of May 2015, and now it's 2018. And every single CU might have some small adjustments on the server-side support. So now we're refreshing everything to May 2018. So both 2016, 2013 in May 2018. So, but that also means that if you're using PnP CSAM NuGet packages or the PowerShell, the baseline will be May 2018. So the server side has to be updated on that level to make sure that everything works.
Right. So in other words, if you are on an older farm, then you cannot use the latest module, but you have
Correct.
To go back
to the previous version. Yes.
Gotcha.
And this is. Well, this is a version nightmare, to be honest, but it is just something what we need to do for on-premises, because we don't control the server side. For SharePoint Online, it's much more easier because we control the server side and we know that on which versions and what is supported on server side.
Well, in theory, because then you have target release for everybody, target release for individuals, and different flights and different stages as things become available. So, well, it's like in theory, you should have there, and you will get it somewhere between now and 2 weeks.
Correct. Or, well, in the case of targeted release, it's not necessarily always 2 weeks, because
exactly. So it might be ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an interesting model, and it's an interesting challenge to version the releases in the right way. Anyway, so I always try to remind myself to keep things short, right? So what have you done for the past weeks for the SharePoint Dev stuff?
So from the SharePoint Dev stuff, it's finally, after I think I spent about 6 months on that, and it's not like 6 months every day, but it took so long because we missed commands. I finally finished the cross-platform setup script based on Office 365 CLI for the SharePoint starter kit. Yeah, exactly. So now people on non-Windows OSs can actually try it too without having to run a VM.
Yes.
Right, because up until now, if you wanted to run the script, there was one available in PowerShell, but I mean that works only on Windows.
Yeah.
So like for me, that was like, yes, I need it. I want to give it a try, but that means that I have to have VM and run it there. Yeah. So now we have a different way, alternative way, and it's done. So that was really cool. And actually, the cool thing is that right after, I think I finished it on December 24th.
It's a Christmas gift. Come on.
Exactly. Like, oh, Merry Christmas.
It's a Christmas miracle.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't go to that extent. It just works. But it was cool to see that few people give it a try, and it worked. Like, there were no big issues. Like, one big issue that we had was that apparently, like, at that time in CLI, you couldn't specify the locale of the site collection of the modern site.
Yep.
Right. So it would just create a site, and it would work for most folks, but some of them would have like, okay, so it created a Portuguese site for me, and then the site pages list is not called that way, and then it cannot be retrieved. So apparently, in some cases, if you specify the default language in the tenant, I think, then it will pick it up. Yeah. The weird thing is that, for example, for me, even though if I create a site in Portuguese, all of the UI is in English, and the site pages list is still called in English. So I cannot repro that, even though I specified the locale when creating a site. And
yeah, but that's a tenant level setting because it's tenant language, which is, by the way, I should I say this out loud? I don't think it's a right design, but we'll need to live with that for now, at least.
Exactly, because I mean, like, so when you create a site in the UI, you can say, okay, create this site in Portuguese or Dutch.
Yeah.
And that is, like, if you go to site properties, you will see that is the language, but then all of the UI is in English. Like,
yep.
So it's kind of weird, but yeah. So that one is done. And another one is that we had a release of the CLI. We are now on version 1.12.0 with a few additions. And actually, that was the fun thing because, like, for the setup script, we needed one last command, which was adding text to pages. Because in the starter kit, we have 3 pages or 4 with content.
Yep.
So that was the last thing that we missed in CLI. So we added that.
There's more than that. There's 6 news articles, and then there's the welcome pages.
Yeah, but I mean, the welcome one, that is only in the web parts. So we had that already.
Sure.
But then the one thing that we didn't have was the ability to have text on that. So we added that, and that is done.
Yeah.
And then we also have new beta release of the CLI with, finally, we got to that, a cert-based auth.
Cool.
So if you want to use CLI in like a build pipeline or anything else, and you don't want to log in with credentials but with cert, then you can do it now.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. Which is something which you should have actually for SharePoint Online PowerShell as well. But that's a completely another story, right?
Isn't it there? You cannot
authenticate with cert? You cannot authenticate with certificates. You cannot authenticate with app only for SharePoint Online PowerShell, the out-of-the-box PowerShell. For PnP PowerShell,
okay, gotcha. Gotcha.
Because PnP PowerShell is open source, and that's controlled by the PnP community and the father of PnP PowerShell, yes, Erwin van Hunen. But of course it's there because we can actually get it there without having any negotiations with anybody else. Now, SharePoint Online PowerShell is out-of-the-box PowerShell, and then there's a much more difficult release process, ownerships, everything else is...
Well, but I mean, to be honest, that would be really tough because... if I'm not mistaken, cert-based auth is based on an AAD app.
True. That is true.
So, and you couldn't have first-party or even third-party created by Microsoft a multi-tenant AAD app with cert auth with full permissions because everybody could do anything on any tenant.
True.
So it would require everybody to create an app and then specify the ID of the app and all of that. So it would be quite a few hoops, which is like, like given the fact, like, okay, what would you be able to do with the SPO PowerShell that you cannot do with PMP1? And sure, there are things like the legal stuff and SLAs and all of that, but
true.
Yeah.
True. And from that perspective, the PMP PowerShell is much more advanced than the native SharePoint Online one, because the SharePoint Online one only concentrates anyway on the tenant level configuration, not on the site level, and it doesn't have the flexibility of authentication options. But anyway, that's a separate discussion. even though that does relate on the SharePoint dev topics as well, because I would always consider PMP PowerShell as an example as a developer capability rather than a IT pro capability. It's debatable, but in many cases, people are using PMP PowerShell in Azure Functions, even though Azure Functions v2 doesn't support PowerShell, at least yet. But it's one of the tools within our tool belt, right? Because somebody might say the CLI that's not development, that's actually running commands, right? So
and so actually building a script that is like on the edge, right? Because I mean, you could say that being a dev, you would be more proficient and it will be much more on the top of your head to use things like C#, JavaScript, and then PowerShell. When you get to you can build really complex stuff in that.
Yep.
So it's like, where do you draw the line between admin and dev?
Yep, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Now, let's actually jump on the screen because we have quite a few items to actually go through, community contributions and community stuff. So we can talk about the random topics as we do that as well. So you need to tell me whenever you got the screen. You got it.
There. Of course.
So this one, just a big thank you. Thanks for everybody who've been involved within 2018 related on SharePoint developer community activities, AKMS, SPPMP. And just some numbers to share. So we're having now more than 1 million monthly views on the SharePoint Dev Docs. I think we actually had 1.4 million monthly views in December, which is quite a lot. It might be related on the migration activities, what we did from the MSDN to the Dev Docs. So it will most likely come slightly down. So there might have been some checking and verification tooling, which is increasing the views. But anyway, and we have been having 186 contributors within the last year for SharePoint Dev Docs.
Cool.
Thank you. Because that's the only way we can make sure that the content is matching reality, I would say, because it's the people who actually work with this stuff on the day-to-day basis, rather than the people who, in theory, might know what it is, but they haven't actually even tried it. So it's. Am I saying that out loud?
You're meaning like us?
Yes, indeed. But it's super important that people are contributing on the docs and also letting know if there's any mistakes but it's really super easy to click the edit button on the top right corner and submit a change. So and then you get acknowledged. So
you could even argue, I think, that it's easier to just do the fix than to go through the hoops of creating an issue, explaining what you want, explaining why, we need to change this because this done.
Yep. Yeah, that is true. And even though your suggestion might not be the 100% how on the wording perspective, we can always take that one, adjust the wording, and then do
exactly.
So that's a great way of contributing as well. Now on the videos, we had more than 2 million watch time minutes. We just broke 2 million watch time minutes. It's a pity that we can't sell ads, right?
What do you mean we can't?
I don't think my counterparties would like that in marketing. So, what are you selling these ads for?
But I mean, what if they were ads for Office 365? It's SharePoint.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. And that's a 2 million watch time minutes and more than 33 million unique views. So basically, if you divide 2 million by 33,000, you'll get how many minutes people are by average watching a video. So, and I think we are in 7 minutes by average on a video. So, which isn't too bad. So that's a decent. Quite a lot of people are jumping clearly on the interesting parts of the video. Now on the GitHub side and on the reuse or share reuse side, 932 contributors with more than 27,000 contributions, and that's a massive number. So to be fair, just to be super transparent on this one, that number does include also Office UI Fabric React. It includes everything in OneDrive, SharePoint, and PnP organization. Because technically, I'm not from SharePoint engineering. Did you know that? I'm from OneDrive and SharePoint engineering.
ODSP, of course.
We are basically one big family in OneDrive and SharePoint because it's the same underlying tech anyway. So even though messaging and marketing perspective, it seems to be two different things, but it's the same Office Dev, what would I put it? ODSP Dev platform is actually my team. So we're responsible for the dev platform. And then there's in our team, there's different PMs responsible for different things. Now, what?
Yeah, so which in a way is odd if you ask me, because OneDrive from the development point of view seemed to me more like the Microsoft Graph.
Mm-hmm. Which wasn't the case a few years back. It is more Graph now. But when you think about it, in our what we want to happen with SharePoint also is that the Microsoft Graph will have better API surface in the SharePoint side as well, and people would be able to use just Microsoft Graph for SharePoint. Now, the downside of that one, or let's say the challenge of that one, and that is actually the right term, not just being a consultant here. The challenge of that one is the fact that in SharePoint, the REST API and CSAM surface is massive. Because like 3-4 years ago, we were running a program where we were addressing those gaps, which are not there in the CSAM, but they existed in Farm Solution. So we actually worked with large customers across the world by helping them moving from Farm Solutions to adding model. And that's when we addressed the API gaps in CSAM and REST API. So now, and that we executed that program for 2.5 years or something. It was, by the way, a brilliant time. And now we're almost in the point of we will need to do exactly the same for Microsoft Graph if we want to have the exact same API surface coverage in the Microsoft Graph as in the CSAM and REST API side, which will never happen, by the way, because the same level of surface on the Microsoft Graph, just the investment versus the resource requirements is not worth it. So I think we'll find out some sort of a balance there. But
I guess so exactly as you said, right? It's big, and that's the thing that I've also seen, like when working on CLI, like we have a whole list of the things that are available in PowerShell, both SPO and PnP.
Yep.
And that is, for a big part, the list of actions that you would want to do, and it's a big list. I think we have in CLI we have over 100 commands, 140 or so only for SPO. And I'm not even sure if we are halfway there. So It is a lot of effort. And like the good thing is that, sure, in Microsoft Graph, you wouldn't need to implement the API. But everything that is in Graph has to be OData 4 compliant. And sometimes you will need to adjust things. And also there are things like search. Like try to fit that round peg into the square hole. Yeah,
exactly. So sure, sooner or later we need to figure it out what it is, and I think the solution will be, and now we're almost designing the solution here, is somehow you have to be able to seamlessly flip between the APIs with the same authentication model. So right now you need to do additional hoops and tricks to go to the Graph versus the Microsoft versus SharePoint native APIs, and that's really I think that's the challenge. If people can flip between the Microsoft Graph APIs and native APIs more seamlessly, then I think that's the right solution. On the other hand, there's other implications of all of that discussion as well. So,
didn't we have the other day? There was, I think, an article or a blog post where we would share something that was available for a long time. So we know it as Vroom, like the middle layer that glues Graph to SPO, and there was something available for a long time, but it was not that well known. And that's how you could call it without having to step out.
Absolutely.
Create an AAD app, get token, and all of that. That would be the way to call it.
Correct. And that really comes down on the fact that Microsoft Graph isn't replacing the out-of-the-box underlying APIs. It is actually proxy calling into the native SharePoint APIs. And then in the SharePoint APIs, we have a separate layer designed for the Graph API calls. And you can call that using through Graph or using without Graph. And I think we need to do a video on this one as a webcast or whatever. Let's put it in the to-do notes, because that will help for the people to understand that, oh, I can actually flip on that API as well, and I can use that without the Graph. And sure, the Microsoft Graph, the authentication, unified API, everything else, absolutely brilliant, but it has other implications. So anyway, the final thing on the slide, more than 52,000 unique tenants using open source components. This is basically using the PnP open source components like the PnP CSUN, PnP PowerShell, PnP JS in SharePoint, in Office 365 in 2018. That's pretty massive number, actually. I still remember when we had that's like way back, we had a discussion with Sean Squires related on the PnP provisioning versus the site designs. This was before SharePoint site designs were implemented. And we were having a discussion, and Sean Squires' assumption was that, hey, the PnP provisioning engine is used like, 10, 20 tenants? And it's like, no, it's 2,500. What? In a month or whatever. So it's the amount of the customers using these things is great to see. And obviously how we're indicating and how we're getting this calculated, by the way, is that we are adding whenever you're using PnP PowerShell, we're adding additional header markers when we're calling on SharePoint Online. So we're able to crawl then SharePoint Online logs and basically see how many tenants are using PnP PowerShell. So that's, by the way, how it's actually done.
Cool.
And yes, you do not have access on SharePoint Online logs, but we do. We're Microsoft, so that's how we can do this. Anyway, classic ask as well. Can I get to the URL logs of SharePoint Online? No, you can't.
Why? Because there's a lot of things there. It's like environments, shared tenants, and you cannot isolate logs per tenant.
And all of these GDPR stuff and everything else, and there would be too many risks of trying to automate anything related on that versus the advantages.
Anonymizing data, security, usernames, like no.
Exactly.
Nightmare.
Cool. Let's move on the tab. So other thing what we wanted to pinpoint is this one. So January 2019 community calls schedule. So there's quite a lot of community calls again coming up on this month. There's obviously our bi-weekly SharePoint framework happening on 7 a.m. Pacific time on bi-weekly on Thursdays. And we do know that 7 a.m. might be tough if you're from Pacific time, but it's trying to balance between the Europe and theoretically even APAC versus Pacific. So no offense for Pacific people living in Pacific time, but you're living kind of on the edge of the of the time zone almost.
No, stop digging. Move on. Next.
Yes. Anyway, so there's a SharePoint bi-weekly SharePoint framework SIG coming on this Thursday, and then also Microsoft Graph. Originally, Microsoft Graph is meant to be on the first Tuesday of every single month, but this time the first Tuesday of every single month would have been 1st of January. So it's not a working day typically, so that's fine. Then there's the SharePoint monthly call on next Tuesday, Office add-ins monthly, SharePoint General Dev bi-weekly on Tuesday. Then there's a January 10th. There's actually 3 community calls. Wow! So adaptive cards is a new one starting from January 10th. I'm not super familiar what is an adaptive card. Theory I am, but maybe I should actually join that call and listen up. And then there's a overlapping between the Microsoft Identity bi-weekly office hours on that one. So that's happening there as well. Microsoft Teams one got canceled on December, but luckily it seems to be happening on January. Power Apps is a new one as well. So there's a Power Apps monthly community call starting from here. And then we're repeating the bi-weekly, well, technically weekly ones with SharePoint development. But quite a lot of community calls, and obviously every single one of them is getting recorded, and they're getting published either using the SharePoint Dev channel or the Office Dev channel. So for all of the other ones, then SharePoint Dev, they get published through the Office Dev channel. But because SharePoint had its own YouTube channel way way much more subscribers and everything else than Office Dev. We don't want to combine. So at least yet, we'll see if that's going to happen at some point. Cool. Then this one was really interesting. So from Mark Cashman, and this is an update on the December 2018 roadmap update. So there's quite a lot of stuff actually here in this article related on what's coming on the SharePoint modern experiences. And there's a humongous amount of cool stuff coming, like page designs. You can create consistent experiences. You can basically save these designs as page designs and start from them when you're creating pages. Super cool stuff. There's a roadmap links in here. So if I click the roadmap link, by the way, let's actually make sure what actually happens. Why am I saying this in Finnish?
Because your URL has that in Finnish, but I didn't know that there's a roadmap in Finnish. Wow.
Toteutussuunnitelma. Okay.
Of course.
I don't understand why I have an English operating system, English keyboard, English browser, and I'm still getting stuff in Finnish.
Yes, your IP address.
No. Yes. Anyway.
You are in Finland, right?
I am. Yes.
Stop
am I really? Sure. But this is pointing out on the roadmap status files, and you can actually then get in more information around the individual roadmap item in here. Last modified 26th of December. So this is basically the list of things which have been modified since. So there was the site design form, so what has been executed in the site, so you can actually go and what's being the site design, more details on site designs which are getting executed. Title region and each page, this region in here, so you're able to actually define how the page header section is getting rendered. So is it a small plain, which is the small one, or is it a color block, which is this one, or image and title, which is classic experience? Overlap, I can't remember what's the difference between that. Modern pages support for section background shading. This is basically in here.
I think you're seeing here the overlap.
Yes, the overlap of things. And that's actually, you can see also the challenge if the web part doesn't support overlap. That's a weird selection of web parts, by the way. But basically, the section background selection is in here. You're able to for the section, and in this case, based on a theme, we're doing an overflow of the theme color on the back. And because this web part does not support or does not want to support overlay, the background rendering, it's looking like a white marker in here. It can accept that it's actually, let's say, what's the overflow? I can't remember the right term. We'll get
background transparency.
Well, yes, that's what it means, that there's a something slots. I can't remember the right term. Sorry.
You mean the CSS slots?
No, there's a, we just released actually.
Theme slots.
So let me actually do this ad hoc. I'm going to jump on the SharePoint Dev Docs, not on this one. If we go to the design, and let's actually close Lucas thing, design a web part. It is semantic slots. There we go. I just published this one yesterday, if I remember correctly. And this one,
it's June 12, 2018.
That hasn't been updated properly, so that's fine. So this wasn't in the table of content. It wasn't in docs since yesterday. But this, what it means basically is that how the web part flows and how the semantic slots are being rendered and how you're able to render consistent background and the CSS overlay. So this is more the design guidance on that one. We still need to work on the technical samples on this one. Work in progress.
Cool.
That's what it means. News pinning. So you're able to pin specific news on the site, or you're able to, news order. Okay, that's really cool. Personalized web parts. So you're able to target the web parts based on the personalized attributes, right?
Correct.
My recent documents, my frequent sites.
So this one seems more like the data that you get from Graph, not really audiences, if you like.
Correct. Yes, not the classic audiences. That's important to realize as well. So this has nothing to do with the classic audiences. The new audiences model is based on Azure AD and attributes and the groups in there. The old audience model didn't work out because it was originally designed for on-premises and it doesn't scale in the SharePoint Online level, when we have thousands and thousands of tenants in a single farm, and it compiles the audiences once a week or something, and you can adjust that because the compilation process is farm-wide, not per tenant. And anyway, so
that wouldn't work.
Yeah. My recent documents and my frequent sites, these are something which I actually have also as a web parse in the starter kit, right?
Correct.
We implemented this in the last May for starter kit, and now they're moving in to be a native out-of-the-box web parts as well. Obviously, when this happens, we'll get rid of them in the SharePoint starter kit, or we'll drop them from the default rendering and replace them with out-of-the-box one. That's a natural transition how these things are moving. So when people see that starter kit was extremely successful and still is, and we keep on evolving that, people, we need to have a recent documents web parts. Let's provide that as an out-of-the-box option.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. Stream web part updates, so updates on that one. That's always still a sign that we still need to do some adjustments in the future as well, if you need to copy paste URLs directly, not by picking the right thing, but it's supported APIs and all of that. So some other settings, OneDrive Fluent UI, YAML group files, a lot of adjustments. Permanently block
it is.
Create reminder using Microsoft Flow and list and libraries. That's really cool
also
as well. Column formatting update. So this is basically the fact that you don't need to define everything in CSUM. You have a basic editor for basic value, basic rendering in here, which is really good. Location column for SharePoint List and Office. So you're able to actually have a location column there. Scan items and add custom metadata. Really cool stuff. And related technologies then on the admin center. So a lot of stuff which has got rolled out or updates by end of the year as well. So you'll see more and more stuff obviously getting enabled on the tenants early this year. So
woohoo!
A lot of stuff. PnP tenant templates. Oh, I wasn't aware that they're actually mentioning this one.
Huh.
Oh, that's really cool. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Cool. See some updates. Oh, we're covering, actually, this is really good. I wasn't aware of this. So we're covering apparently also in some level, at least, to see the developer stuff in these updates as well. Thank you, Mark. So that's really good. I wasn't aware of this. Cool. And more stuff coming, obviously. But this really shows the list of things is massive. It really shows how much investments the modern experiences are getting. So we're getting more and more capabilities. We're getting capabilities which didn't exist in the classic publishing. So we're able to enable stuff which were not available in the past, which is really cool. Moving on things, so let's close that one. This one was the starter kit setup. So basically how to set up the starter kit using Bash script or CLI. Right.
Yep.
And we'll get this one.
Both.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Both. We'll get this one merged, the actual starter kit repo, and we'll figure out the right, let's say, messaging and all of that. But because it makes sense to put everything on a single location where people can find them, rather than drop it over the internet and people can find anything, right?
Yes, absolutely.
CLI 1.12.0 updates. So that's for example that annotated text to the modern pages, which we talked about in the intro as well.
Correct.
Cool stuff. This one was from Julie around the log handling in the SharePoint framework and using also BMP.js. So really cool stuff. And the sample code is available from Julie as well. So how to use the PnP logging package within your SharePoint framework solutions. And he's referencing you here. Who is this Waldek Mastercard guy? So basically, I have no idea either. But it's a great example or an entry or a blog post article covering the locking, the basics of locking, and how to do custom locking and how to do advanced locking. And here's an example where Julie is explaining how to do locking to a SharePoint list, which, by the way, might be horrific as well, or not a good idea either. Because why is that? Well, SharePoint list has still the limits of handling amount of data in a SharePoint list, kind of, based on the views and all of that. So.
Yeah, but I mean, so I'm not sure if that's the case here, but you could, yeah. So this is only for errors.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you could even say, okay, but if you're a big company and there's error in web part, then everybody visiting the page will trigger the log. So
and I get a 50,000 exceptions on that error. And anyway, there's a good ideas to figure out how to not have too many entries on the logs. Anyway, it's the discussion of what do we actually log and what are the things, what do we instrument versus what's actually needed. I think we've been having those discussions as Microsoft. Well, there has been any news announcements every now and then. Then did you know that some software is logging this and this stuff? And quite often those are just there to understand how people are using the software. And that's always the balance of what do we actually control and what do we actually try to instrument versus what's actually needed to be instrumented. The more data you get out of locking for your custom components is theoretically useful, but is it really, or is it causing just additional what's the right term? Additional
traffic load,
additional load, additional crap, basically, which you need to Cool. From Elio, great submission also, setting up Puppeteer to run Azure DevOps for your automated UI tests. So Elio works for the Valo intranet, and I know that they're using this one in their automated testing. So basically, this is walking through the DevOps, Azure DevOps setups, and also how to use the Puppeteer for the automated UI testing. So cool stuff. And to understand how to set up things. I think he had links to the resources. Yes, there we go.
Of course it is.
Of course.
It does.
Yeah. Good. Improve your SharePoint online search results using Microsoft Cognitive Services from Frank Cornu. So Frank is basically the person, together with Mikael Svensson and a few others, who've been implementing this really cool React Search Refiner's SPF example. And this one is in the SharePoint organization. And it really gives you the capability of building like classic style or classic, how would I put it, search center with the typical capabilities which we used to have in the classic SharePoint, right? So you could have custom experiences and rendering, all of that stuff. You're able to control the layouts and templates and all of that. And now Frank has been then updating the web parts and how to adjust and optimize the search, ranking models and operators and manage properties and their weighting, and then also using the cognitive services to adjust their settings. So really cool stuff. And really useful resource as well. And that kind of relates on the new result type features in React Search Refiner's SPF example. So you're able to basically have a result types taking into account in the sample as well. We'll add obvious links on the blog post and the sample in the video notes when I'm editing this. So super cool stuff. And I know that we've been having a discussion with Frank and Mikael that we'll do a webcast recording for PMP related on this topic and this web part. So people understand how easy it is to actually build a cool, customized or extended search experience in the modern SharePoint using this web part. So super powerful. Right now, the modern SharePoint search experience doesn't support that much adjustments. So yet it is all coming in the future, but there's no public timelines which I could actually provide. So this one is your really good starting point. Now, thoughts on shortcomings such as on SPFX dynamic data capabilities from Mark. So really good stuff as well, kind of an explaining what are the limitations on the dynamic data. And he's apparently quoting this person called Vesa in here. Yeah, so so basically one of the challenges when the dynamic data is that it's only supported in modern experiences, and that might be a deal breaker for some of the companies. If your web part is meant to be used also in a classic, then you can't take advantage of dynamic data. So then you might actually implement the communication between components using some alternative means. So, but there are multiple other ways of making this happen, basically. But then it's not out of the box dynamic data downside. And maybe we should. I need to have a chat with Pat Miller on this one. Potentially, maybe should have this capability in Classic. On the other hand, do we want to invest our time on Classic because we are short on resources as well, rather than spending time on addressing gaps and improving the modern experience? So it's always interesting debate whether we actually use those resources.
Well, addressing gaps, you could say, well, this might be a gap for some, right? So. Yeah. As you said, like at the end of the day, you have to find the balance. Like, where do people are? What do you need to give them to help them?
Where do we want them to go as well? So,
super important. Well, thing. yes. Whereas for some, it might they might see it as, sure, I understand you want me to go there, but I cannot go there because reality is this,
absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I need to. Do things for now here.
It's absolutely classic debate and discussion. So absolutely makes sense. Cool. And then David had a nice video around the modern SharePoint pages, so layouts and white spaces, and basically overview on modern pages, web part content area whites, what they mean, analyzing screen resolution statistics, and final review. Now, like we saw from the roadmap update, there are adjustments, a lot of adjustments on this area in the future as well. So this is, again, a time of a moment, a review, what's there, what's available right now. And then within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it might be outdated because things are evolving so fast. But hey, that's reality because we're being insanely agile on the things.
But I guess then still, right, it will still apply to people who are, for example, on-prem. True. Because even though they might be updated for online, if you are on premises, you won't get that initially already directly.
In SharePoint 2019.
Correct.
Because modern experiences will never be supported in SharePoint 2016 or SharePoint 2013. So
yeah, unless you build them yourself, which I don't.
Yeah. Don't do that. And then, well, this one was the designing, so let's actually close that one. But that's all articles what we wanted to go through today. So let me actually stop sharing, and we can do a quick summary and close up. It is a interesting winter snowstorm in Helsinki. So how's the weather in?
It is dry. It's gray. I think it's above 0 centigrade. I think it's something like +4 or something.
Yeah.
So we still did, like, we had 1 day of snow. It would snow in the middle of the night. By 8 a.m., it would all melt.
Yeah.
And that's what we had so far. So there is still a chance that we will have snow in February, March, or maybe not.
Yeah. Well, we're getting it right now. So it's pretty windy and insanely windy, actually. So and snowing. So it's nice to have a dog, right?
I wouldn't know. And yet you are sitting there in your short sleeves, like it's winter, it's storming. Like I'm not cold.
But inside of the house, of course. Come on. So. Yes, we live in Finland. The houses have to be built properly. So
yeah, or I can imagine that. Otherwise, it would be like, yeah, I'm freezing.
Yes, indeed. Anyway, so any stuff what you're looking into doing for this week? You're still away. You're not actually working this week, right? We're just having a chat.
Correct.
And you'll be back on Monday 7th?
Well, yes, but then I'm traveling to Munich. We have a company meeting 2 days, which is Tuesday, Wednesday, and I will be then traveling back on Thursday. So next week I won't be doing much other than being on the road and meeting important stuff too, but non-dev. I don't think I will have much time for dev. I'm trying to think if there is anything big that we planned so far, but I think if I look, for example, at CLI, we've done many big things. Like over the last beta that we had was something like eight PRs.
Yeah.
And it's like we try to ship a beta every week. So 8 PRs, and none of that, like there was like I think one minor fix, but majority were either big things like cert-based auth, new commands. So there are big things. For a beta, for a weekly update. So I think we got these out of the way. I don't think there are quite a few things still in progress. So when they will come in, we'll have new version. But I think it's Like at the moment, there's no big thing that we're working towards. Sure, we're adding more commands, we make it more useful, we have more reach, but right now we don't have like one thing we work towards. Like over the last half year, we had with the setup script for the starter kit, where it was like, okay, we need to be able to do that. So for that, we need these commands because otherwise we can't.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's still a chance that we will extend starter kit, which will require us to update things in CLI, which we miss.
Which you anyway need to happen because there will be stuff happening on the PnP provisioning engine side, which will be then taken into account in the starter kit because we're looking into evolving that as well. So there's some gaps related on the latest capabilities which have been released versus PnP PowerShell and the PnP provisioning engine. Those will be addressed, and those will then adjust the starter kit scripts as well and the tenant templating. So, and also there's the SharePoint 2019 support coming for the PnP CSUM and the PnP PowerShell, and now the NuGet updates will adjust the code quite significantly. We actually have an initial version of also on community samples for OneDrive coming up, so I would just need to announce those. We're basically trying to start a similar model as with SharePoint for OneDrive. So if people are actually having a OneDrive community samples, they can actually contribute them in the OneDrive organization. So which reminded me, and then we're moving some of the repos from SharePoint organization to the PnP organization.
Yeah,
yes, we need to add so many things to do. But it's an endless to-do list. It's one of those things. There's no way for catching up on all the things.
Yeah, but so the other day when I thought back about my previous work, like when you would work on a project, there would be start, there would be end, and there's like the cool down period between the one and the other. Yep. You don't get that when you work on products because that never finishes. Sure. It's like there's always more work than hours in a day, and there's always things like things change in the market. There are new things that you could do, so you have to think about it. You have to align how things are, review direction. So it's not like a project where you have a clear scope. Start, you work on it, done.
Yep.
Right. Yep. So it's different mentality there.
And maybe at some point, for example, SharePoint is an awesome example. When we're concentrating on-premises releases of SharePoint, like 2007, 2010, 2013, there was basically a start of a project and then end of the project when the product was out. But now that we are doing cloud first and it's SharePoint Online driving the game, the 2019 was like, hey, we just took basically a fork from the code and adjust that slightly. Hey, there's SharePoint 2019. But the pipeline and the working process is just all the time going on.
Well, but I don't know how it was in the past for you guys. I can imagine that like devs didn't sit do nothing, right? So the moment they shipped, there would already be plans for working. Okay, what's going to be done next? And that was spec'd, and then it was built, and then when that was done, so basically devs, there was like 3 years gap for devs to see their work.
There's still a pipeline, which was basically now we need to. There's a deadline. We need to do something now. When stuff is getting released every single week, if you slip a 1 week, it doesn't matter because it goes live next week or the week after.
Yeah, for 3 years slipping.
3 years slipping. Yes, exactly. So and sure, there was the capabilities, for example, in the SharePoint 2010 and 2013, where people were spending months and months on building something, and then it either didn't work properly, or you missed the boat on or things change or whatever. So it's different. It's interestingly different. And to be fair, we talked about this one in the past as well. I think the speed of innovation, speed of releasing stuff, we also as a Microsoft, and at this, I think this is industry standard, industry-wide thing. Well, being agile is a good thing. But then being too agile is not a good thing. So there's somewhere there is a balance somewhere out there where you need to be more, let's say, descriptive. What's coming out? When is it coming out? But not being all the time just releasing too much stuff because people can't stay up to date. The docs cannot be staying up to date. The guidance, the help files, the training. There's no way for keeping all of that up to date if the stuff is getting out too fast.
Actually, the cool thing is the other day I read a book about how do they do releases, for example, in HubSpot, I don't know if you know the tool. It is a big CRM tool. And they actually disconnected the releases from a marketing release.
Yeah.
So a release is just like devs ship. When things are done, they ship it, and they ship it to customers, beta, preview, whatever. And then once in 2 or 3 months, there is a release.
Yeah.
And that is based on real customer evidence and usage and so forth, because customers have used that for 2 months. And maybe then they will have the guidance, the docs, and so forth. Yep. Right? So it's also an interesting approach how you can work with that in a way that you don't wait 2 months for a big bang. Like when things are done, they are shipped. And sure, at some point will come the adoption, the mainstream, and that will catch up eventually. But also devs, when they build things, they can get early feedback whether things work, whether they need adjustments or not.
Yeah. Or you release everything, the targeted release all the time, like we do.
Exactly.
But then the one thing what we should actually improve is the fact that we do, for example, monthly summaries of everything, and that's basically what Mark Cashman's roadmap summer updates are, kind of one sign of it. But that's not everything, because that's lacking then the dev side of the game, because that's a different marketing responsible of the dev side of Office. So, and from a customer perspective, we are kind of tripling down updates here and there, and it's difficult to follow. We should have one monthly release, which is basically then this is what came out, this is coming out next month, and this is bubbling under. And again, this came out, and it's more descriptive on what's actually happening, because then as part of the monthly releases, we would be able to then do the updates of docs and everything else, and basically schedule the updates on those. But hey, we'll see. I think it's a learning machine, and based on the feedback from customers and partners, we need to learn how to make this happen in the future. So,
cool.
Which is a great stopping point.
Yeah.
But, so keep the feedback coming, right? That's the number one thing.
Absolutely.
And be vocal, repeat. Also your feedback, that's really important. Sending one Twitter tweets for somebody saying, but I told the guy 2 years ago that this should be done. Yeah, that
doesn't work. No.
Yeah. Be polite though, but still be on repeating on things. So it's just a matter of getting enough attention for the vision and the feedback and the input that you're having, which is super important. But I think that's it for this one. So thank you, Waldek, for taking some time off from your vacation.
Yes, it is.
Holiday break. Yes.
Yeah.
For this one, and we'll do another recording next week because we want to keep the weekly recording scheduled. So making sure that everybody, the community who's writing new stuff, is getting also acknowledged within these videos. But thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for your support within 2018. We're looking forward for all of the cool stuff that you're doing in 2019. Right?
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.